What's happening, guys? This is Mike's Little Dragon Channel, and I have got my new books for the week. As you can see right here, we've got a decent sized stack, and I'll go ahead and do a quick rundown of what I picked up so far. I've got issue number 2 of Spider-Man Noir. This is written by Erik Larsen, who, if you are unfamiliar with him, he is basically the guy who followed up Todd McFarlane's run on Amazing Spider-Man and on the Adjectiveless Spider-Man book. He, one of the founding fathers of the Image Comics, launched Savage Dragon. So he, even though he left Marvel, he has continued to do quite a bit of work. I'm not going to say quite a bit of work, but he has done more work for the big two than any of the other guys that left for Image. And he's not a very terrible writer. He gets a lot of grief for some of the crazy stuff he does in Savage Dragon, which is, his baby, and it's a creator-owned book, so he's able to go absolutely off the rails as much as he wants to because it's his. So it was interesting to see him announced for writing Spider-Man Noir, a character that, he really had no experience or no, any sort of real attachment to. But that's why it was kind of surprising to see how much I enjoyed issue 1. So he's on to something here. I'm enjoying. I enjoyed the first issue. Hopefully the rest of this miniseries will be just as good. Then we've got 1776. This is a miniseries by J. Michael Straczynski. Don't really know particularly a whole bunch about it, but J. Michael has been doing a handful of Marvel projects very recently. So I was a big fan of his work on Thor and some of his indie stuff, his Rising Stars, Midnight Nation. So it's good to see him back working with Marvel again. And he's a pretty strong writer whose work I enjoy. So it'll be interesting to see what he does right here with this book. We've got Fantastic Four by Ryan North. I talk about this book every time it comes out, how much I enjoy it. So there's nothing I can say today that I haven't said before. We've got G.I. Joe right here by Larry Hama. This is in the Real American Hero universe, not the Energon universe. So you essentially have 322 issues worth of continuity right here. You've got basically, this is incredibly unprecedented to have one writer on one book for this amount of time. But, that's what you get right here with Hama being on G.I. Joe. So all 155 issues or ever how many that was that he did originally for Marvel. Then he was with IDW doing Real American Hero. Now he's back right here with Image doing more Real American Hero. And it's all one continuous long story, all helmed by one guy. Which, funny enough, the only other person who's done anything like that is, Erik Larsen here on Savage Dragon. So both him and Hama have that in common. Just one mind, one vision behind one property. We've got Transformers number 26 right here. This is the second issue of Robert Kirkman, Dan Moore run after Daniel Warren Johnson just left. So they are taking over, and I quite enjoyed the first issue of the Robert Kirkman era. I feel like he's probably a little stronger of a writer than Daniel Warren Johnson is. The art might not be as explosive as the Daniel Warren Johnson stuff was, but Dan Moore's no slouch. So you're basically, you're basically in a situation where you've got, two incredibly strong artists right here. So even that Daniel Warren Johnson left, you're not really missing much by going with Dan Moore. So you're in a real good situation, a real good boat right here with creatives on Transformers. Then we have Rob Liefeld's Youngblood number 1 is back again. For those of you who don't know, Rob Liefeld, much like Erik Larsen, was a guy who got his start and his fame at Marvel, left and was one of the founders of Image. Eric Larson, he is a day one guy who launched Savage Dragon. Rob Liefeld was a day one guy who launched Youngblood. Although there was a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and Rob ultimately ended up leaving Image not long after it was founded, he's still one of the forefathers, and he actually lost the rights to Youngblood for quite a while due to some sort of business deal went south. You can find more details about it online, but he has gotten the rights to Youngblood back, and he is bringing it back to Image where it all started. Now, obviously, all the Rob Liefeld is he's very much a lightning rod in the comic book industry. He's highly opinionated. He has a lot, a track record of having books that had really huge sales numbers, but you can kind of put an asterisk on that and say that a lot of those sales numbers came from a time period, that was 30 years ago, and the world 30 years ago isn't what it is now. The comic book industry isn't now what it was then, as far as there's no more newsstands. Essentially, everything is direct to order, no returns. So it's very interesting to see Rob coming back right now. He is somebody who, you either hate him or you love him. To me, he was my favorite Image guy. I loved his artwork on New Mutants and X-Force. Now, that being said, I was 13 or 14 years old at the time, and I am aware of his shortcomings as an artist. A lot of people say he is not a very technically sound artist. His figures are not anatomically correct, and they would be accurate in that. But however, I always say that his books put off a vibe. It is not, it's just action, battle poses, fight scenes, no backgrounds, just kind of a really big comic book type vibe. If you're looking for very anatomical artwork, if you're looking for backgrounds or pages of people having conversations and downtime, this isn't the book for you. It definitely is a book of its era. Youngblood is. It's a book that was very big in the 90s when a lot of things was big. It's, to me, I'm very realistic about what Rob and Youngblood, what their legacy is, and it just reminds, although I'm also very critical of Rob and his takes and his tweets and everything. I'm very critical of that, but I'm also a slave to my nostalgia of being a teenager and reading X-Force and New Mutants when he was on it. So I'm kind of like stuck in the middle. I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, essentially. But if you were a fan in the 90s, you're probably going to pick this up. Now, how the story goes and how long it lasts, that I don't know. Rob has never been known as a person who puts in a ton of work for a ton of consecutive issues. I fully expect this book to get to legacy number 100, which I believe this is legacy number 94 or 95 or something like that. I fully expect him to get that legacy number 100 issue. I'm not sure how long it'll take or what he will do after that, but we'll just see how it goes with Uncle Rob. Then we've got Red Hulk number 10 by Benjamin Percy. This is the last issue in Red Hulk book, and as I've said before, I'm pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoy this book. I don't really know much about Red Hulk and Thunderbolt Ross, but I like Benjamin Percy as a writer, and he really crafted this story very well, kept me entertained and interested the whole time. Then we've got another J. Michael Straczynski book right here. This is a mini-series for Amazing Spider-Man called Torn, and this is set during Peter's college years. So I read the first issue, and I enjoyed it very much. J. Michael Straczynski. You know, he has a really good history with Amazing Spider-Man, so he's got a really good feel for the character. Supergirl, this is one of my favorite books out right now, simply because it is zero angst. It's a very fun, lighthearted book. Each issue is basically one and done. Very accessible to anyone who's looking to read it. I was telling the guy at the shop that Supergirl, Superman Unlimited, Action, these books, they kind of bridge the gap between a kid's book and books like Batman Hush, you know, which are for a more adult, mature audience, or however you want to phrase it. Supergirl, Superman Unlimited, Action, they fit to bridge that gap right there. You can give this book to a kid and it doesn't feel condescending, you know, and they don't feel like they're being talked down to. Which I wish Marvel had more books. I wish Marvel had books like that, you know, let alone more books, but any books that are like that. Then we've got Batman Hush by Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee, and at this point, you know, who cares? You know, this book is just floundering right now. No one is really into this book. Everyone has moved on to Absolute Batman, or they've moved on to the Matt Fraction Batman book. So I basically have picked it up just to see what's going on, see how the story see how the story wraps up, so to speak, or at least the first volume. They're supposed to wrap this first 5 or 6 issues of Hush 2 up, and then they're going to go on hiatus and then come back. So I will not be here when they come back. You can believe that. Then we've got Superman Kryptonite Spectrum. This is from the cats that bring you Ice Cream Man. Ice Cream Man is not a book that I have read before, although I have heard it is incredibly good. And the people that read it really like it. It made quite a bit of noise when it first came out. It was, you know, people were really raving about it, that type of horror feel. But I can see why, because I really like this book right here, this Kryptonite Spectrum book. It has a horror type feel as well. You know, basically Superman has found new versions of kryptonite and is experimenting them on himself, and each issue deals with the fallout of his exposure to one of the new types of kryptonite. So you got some really cool horror vibes right here. Then we have Event Horizon Dark Descent 3. This is the sequel to the 90s movie, the 90s horror outer space movie Event Horizon. Beneath the Trees, Where Nobody Sees, Rite of Spring. This is the sequel to the first volume of Beneath the Trees, which was incredibly good. I always describe it as Dexter meets Richard Scarry's, you know, little cartoon characters. If that's somebody you're familiar with, Richard Scarry, if you're of age, you know, if you're someone that's older, you know who Richard Scarry is and all his little kids' books. But basically Dexter right here, but with animal type people. Then we've got Nemesis Forever. This is a Mark Millar miniseries right here. I did pick up issue 1. I could not get issue 2. I couldn't find it anywhere, so I'm going to have to pick up issue 2 at some point. But I got issue 3 right here. If you're unfamiliar with what the concept of Nemesis is, imagine if it was a world in which Batman was absolutely insane villain. So that's basically what Nemesis is. Then we have Blue Falcon and Dynamite here by Jimmy Palmiotti. This Jimmy Palmiotti is someone whose work I like. I have also liked all these nostalgia type books that Dynamite has you know, been putting out. Blue Falcon and Dynamite, I remember them from the Scooby-Doo Laugh Olympics cartoon from back in the day, and basically they are a superhero type concept. You know, you have Blue Falcon and then you have his robot dog Dynamite, and Jimmy Palmiotti has kind of put a modern spin on this a little bit, you know, kind of messed around, same concept of the characters, but just kind of little twists, little upgrades, modernization to make it a pretty fun book. I enjoy it. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is polybag too. It has a card in here somewhere. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Got 15 books this week to read. I got another weekend off, so I can't wait to dive into all these books, read some cool stuff, and give my opinions and my takes on what I read. Hopefully you guys had a chance to get down to your comic book shop, pick your stuff up, and if you did, I hope you're having fun reading all the stuff you got. So till next time, you guys take care. Talk to you later, and bye-bye.